basically going to kind of walk through the process of automating the schedule review process, utilizing Acumen Touchstone. To do that, for our agenda here, I'm going to start by going over just general schedule quality checks, setting up metrics, and doing the schedule reviews in Acumen, being able to pull those schedules in, whether you're using our own open plan scheduling tool, P6, project, whatever it may be, just being able to pull that in and run your own diagnostics and really define the schedule quality metrics that you want to use either for a particular project or as an organization, just kind of showing that flexibility. From there, we're going to take those metrics that we create in Acumen and then pull them into Touchstone and walk you through automating that process, basically giving you a portal and a central location where the person submitting the schedules can log in, send their schedule over, and for those receiving it, they can get into that same portal, have access to the full historical of those saved schedules, access them from there, and then get the automated feedback. So as a submitter, you're going to, I'll walk through this live. You'll see that you get an email back right away that tells you which metrics you were successful on, which ones you weren't successful, and which issues might need to be addressed in order for the schedule to be accepted and progress from there. And then from that point, we're going to, Denise is going to take over a little bit and go through accessing those schedule files out of Touchstone, pulling them out in different formats, and then piecing them together in a larger IMS using Open Plan to follow that path and piece the schedule together. So that's the general agenda that we're going to walk through. Just to go through a little more detail on some of that, as I mentioned, I'm going to start in Acumen, which is going to allow me to pull in 3 different schedule types. I'm actually going to pull in one of each of a Microsoft file, a P6 file, as well as an Open Plan file, just to kind of show that you can review those schedules side by side if you're receiving different versions from different contractors. It's all going to normalize within Acumen and allow you to define what those key metrics that you want to track on are. So that's the process that I'm going to walk through on the front end here. I'll show you a little bit behind, also just piecing together metrics, being able to adjust and create your own metrics. So even if there's some that maybe you have a specific requirement on a certain contract where you need to adjust a metric or adjust a formula, I'll walk through that a little bit as well, because that can be one of the real key integration pieces into Touchstone from Acumen, is the ability to pull out your metrics file and utilize that as the criteria for the evaluation of the schedules. From there, I'll go ahead and show you exporting that out, pulling it into Touchstone, and we'll walk you through that portal. The general flow of how Touchstone works, there's a few steps that you're going to do. One of them is kind of setting up the program, allowing access for the person who's sending you the schedules to be able to get in there and see exactly what criteria is being used to evaluate them, and giving them just access to the portions they need. So when they log into the portal, they're only going to see, these are the projects that I'm responsible for sending the schedules on. They'll send that over and submit it. The evaluation, again, is going to be an automated process. So as soon as they send that in, they're going to get an email back within 30, 40 seconds that tells them you scored XYZ on this particular grouping of metrics, and here's why. And we'll show that firsthand as well. And then the other key points here is the storage of current version of schedule, being able to access that so that you have the true record of the schedule, and you're not always trying to go back in the historicals and figure out which version was the true version, and then being able to monitor that as you go. So a lot of this we're going to show live, so I'm not going to walk through all each individual slide. The end pieces I mentioned when I pass it over to Denise, she's going to walk through downloading the schedules out as the person receiving them, looking at those evaluations, and then taking each of the schedules, regardless of format, and getting them incorporated into Open Plan so that you can build the IMS from there. So most of this, though, is going to be a live demonstration. So that's the general outline that we will follow. I need to adjust this just a little bit so I can get my mouse where I can use it. What? Oh, the waviness you're talking about? Yeah, it's. I was talking to Fred. It's the projector. So these projectors are like, I don't know, maybe 2 feet away from the screen. So yeah, it's the technology on the projector. It's pretty interesting that they can get it that close and you can walk in front of it, but it does create that little wavy effect at the top for sure. All right. So let's close that out and we'll switch over to Acumen to start. If I can figure out how to drag it over here. Oh, this is going to be tricky. I may need to move to where I can see it or duplicate that screen. Otherwise, I'm going to be moving blind. You can see if my mouse will reach over here. Sorry, I didn't think through the screen situation here. Maybe I can duplicate it.
How long is the cord? Can you pull it on?
Let me just change the display settings. I'll just duplicate on both. There we go.
Oh, did it unshare?
It may have. Sharing itself. Okay. Okay, that worked. All right, so what I've done to this point is just open Acumen and pull in a basic P6 file to start the process here. I mentioned I'm going to pull in 3 different schedule types just to show how we can normalize that data. Don't worry, you're not going to need to read all of this, the small writing. Most of it's going to be in larger charts, but I'm going to start by importing in a couple of other pieces of this schedule that we want to use to evaluate. I pulled in one that was a P6 file. I'm going to pull in another one here that's an open plan file. And then we'll pull a third one in that's a Microsoft project file. So in the event that we're receiving maybe multiple different versions from different contractors, we can still get this in and evaluate them from there. And then I'm going to start in the diagnostics area, and then we'll go ahead and walk through the process of defining the criteria, but I'll show you some of the defaults as a starter point as well. All right, so I've got each of those 3 loaded. And if I go over to diagnostics, we'll see it's going to start out on just our default schedule quality metrics out of the box, which are just going to be best practice checks like missing logic, part constraints, things of that nature that really apply to all projects regardless of industry or type. So you can load these in and get a quick view even just of schedule quality. A lot of people like to use these default metrics out of the box as what they're using going forward. You can see down here at the bottom, there's a number of other groupings you can dig into though, whether it's specific float metrics, whether it's lag metrics, logic, etc. So we try to categorize them in ways where you can navigate and dig into different aspects of the schedule as you move forward. What we're really going to walk through today though is taking the foundation that we've got in here for schedule quality. And maybe if you want to tweak a couple of those, create some new ones, to do that, you can go into the metrics area that we've got in here where you can see that schedule quality folder that I've got. I can adjust the weightings for the scoring, and I can come in and look at all the formulas for how we're calculating different things, how we're tracking it, and I can adjust these if I need to. So if I've got different thresholds that I want to define, or maybe I need to adjust a formula, it's pretty easy to do that. Now, the main reason I'm starting here in Acumen is I'm going to take this and create a folder, and I've started the foundation for it that I just called my custom metrics here. And we're going to utilize some metrics that I put together here in Acumen and take them into the automated process. So as a starter point, I just pulled out 5 or 6 of the key ones that I like to use out of the schedule quality mix. And then I'm going to grab a couple more. There's a full library of well over 400 metrics in Acumen at this point. So if there's anything that you're trying to track on the schedule or dig into, typically you're going to find at least the foundation for that metric somewhere in the tool. And from there, it's just a matter of tweaking it to your liking to meet whatever requirement you may have. So if we take, say, for example, float metrics, and maybe I want to add a high float check into my custom metric set that I've got there. I've got one in here that's tracking more than 30 days float. I'm just going to copy and paste that into my custom metrics here. And then from there, maybe I've got, maybe 30 is not exactly the number I want to track. Maybe it's 45, whatever it is in my specific check. A lot of these are pretty easy to adjust. I mean, this one's just a filter value. So if I were to generate this one looking at 45 instead of 30, I can just adjust those values there. And now I've created my own metric based on whatever criteria, in this case, looking for items with more than 45 days flow. There's a number of other ones in here that can be good checks, maybe like writing day to date. I'll add to my custom metrics here. And we'll add just a total activity count as well. So once I've got the grouping that I like, let's just say these are the ones I want to use for schedule quality. I could also do ones that are performance based. So, if I wanted to look at early starts, late starts, early completions, late finishes, things like that, I could do a grouping of that as well and look at it month over month and track progress as we go. So just some different ways you can use that. For now, I'm just going to take these custom metrics that I've created, and I'm going to go ahead and make a new grouping here within Acumen. So I've got a clear one here, and we'll find that folder that I created here on the left. And once we add that in, now I've got the mix of metrics that I wanted to use with the one that I created, and a couple more that I added, and I pulled out the ones that were my key driving factors for out of schedule quality. So now I've got my own view. I'm going to rename this my custom metrics as I labeled that folder. And we're going to take this and show how you can automate rather than having to receive these, load them into Acumen, and review it each time. I'm going to walk you through how the submitter can get that instant feedback, and you can do that within Touchstone. So now that I've got these in here, I'm going to save what we call a metric library template. Put that on my desktop and call it my custom metrics, so I don't confuse myself. And now I've got that file saved. From here, I could publish the reports myself and look at all three of these across. I could send this out to Excel and run the same reports that we're going to generate through automated process. Of course, I'm looking at all three of these. I can push that easily out to Excel and have them tab by tab, where maybe I can go in and see which activities flagged for some things like missing logic, which activities hit for each of the each of the metrics that we're tracking in this particular instance. For now, though, what we're going to utilize is taking the metrics that we had and loading that into the Touchstone automated platform here. So at this time, I'm going to open that up. You can see it's a web portal. It's probably logged me out due to inactivity, so I'm going to log back in here. Right now, I'm logged in as an admin, so it's showing me the view of what I would see as the person setting these up. I'm going to, in a moment, show you what it looks like if I'm just loading them in as the submitter. But I'm going to start by going in as the admin and kind of walking you through a little bit of how this tool works, and then what it looks like to send those submittals and receive them. So the layout here, you're logging into the web portal, and then you can see over here on the left, there's a group called hubs where we've got programs. And then under that, we've got projects. That's the basic hierarchy structure that we set up to organize these. So if you had, in this case, we've got a program here that we've labeled Zoo Program. Within that program, there are 3 different projects that make it up. So you may be receiving schedules from different contractors for each of these different projects, and maybe they just have access to 1, maybe 2 of those. But you, as the overseer and the person receiving them, can see all of them and see all the historicals that go with that. Now, if we wanted to go in and say adjust for each of these criteria, the metrics that I just set up in the other one, if I were to go into, say, for example, we'll go into the welcome project here. It's got some basic data on the project, looking at the previous schedule that we uploaded. So all this data is pulling from the schedules that have been submitted. In this case, there's already a handful, in this, it's 2 of them actually that have been submitted. We're probably going to override one of these here in a minute. But if I go to the configuration, I can come in and import my metrics. So let's go into metrics, and we'll take that file I just created that I called my custom metrics. And we'll go ahead and get that loaded into my instance of Touchstone here. I'll just pull in that one folder. And I believe I did that under my defaults. Here they are. So here are the metrics that I was just utilizing in Acumen, including the one that I created. If I were to take those and use them to create a new acceptance criteria, I can come in and we'll just create a new template that we'll use for the evaluation of these particular ones. And from here, we can add the metrics. You can see I've got the same basic folders that I had before. And if I can remember what folder I had them under. There we are. So I'm going to go ahead and check the box on each of those. The key here, so that the scoring works, is to take this from there and set up how I want the weighting, because some of these may be neutral metrics. I mean, I'm like, when I'm looking at, say, total activity count or just my critical path, I'm not necessarily trying to judge those metrics. I'm going to take things like hard constraints and missing logic and maybe put them into a more negative type light. But some of these we're going to leave as general, just okay standards. So we're going to weight these a little bit here so that I can get some scoring. And once I do that, I can save these now. And you can set the acceptance to whatever you like. I'm just going to leave that at 75, but all this is pretty flexible in how you want to define the scoring, how you want it to portray that to the submitter as well. I mean, you can say things like accepted, or you can change the terminology to say, you know, received, maybe not accepted. Maybe you still want to do some additional evaluation on that particular schedule. So I've got the metric set now. We'll go back into the project where I can then assign that. So when we go into configuration for this sample project that I was in a moment ago, you can see right now the acceptance criteria that was previously in this one was the DCMA 14 point, just one of the standard industry checks. I can then switch this now to my custom metrics. And I'm going to leave the window open. Important thing to note on the window, because you can define when you want to be able to receive these schedules, when they're due, and that way the submitter can go in and say, you know, we know the schedule's due the first week of every month, whatever that is. You can define that window in here and have it have that window open when they go into log in, so that they can see that they've either submitted it on time or not in some cases. And then you can set the field mapping to read for any of the 3 major scheduling tools that Touchstone supports, whether it's P6, Open Plan, or Project. So in this particular instance, I believe this one was our Open Plan file. This one actually is the project one. So let's go adjust the template for that one to project. And you can see that saves the project. I can then assign submitters. I'm going to log in as Denise here in a moment and submit some of these so that you can see what that looks like as you go in to upload the schedules. So you have full access control over who can get into these. And then the other 2 that I had, we'll go ahead and adjust those as well. We go back to our program. We'll look at one for Bear that we had in here. That one is going to be adjusted to use the same template for all 3 of these that I'm going to use. And then that one, I believe, is the P6. Is that right, Denise? All right. And then we've got one more before I walk you through the submittal process here. So we'll go in and adjust the fish projects. And that one is going to then be the open plan. And we'll use the same template that we had before. Now, all of that's going to save as my admin access and save these projects here. And then I'm going to log out and show you what it looks like as the submitter who's going to send over these schedules. And then we'll let Denise walk you through what it looks like to receive them and some of the data you can get both in Touchstone and then how that looks in Open Plan as well. So if we take this and I'm going to go ahead and log out. And is the user ID just your name, Denise? All right, so now that I log back in with just my submitter profile, you can see the difference in the screen here. Of course, before I had a number of options, I could go in and change metrics. I had a lot more ability to tweak those and define how I wanted them. As the submitter, I only see the programs and the projects that I'm assigned on. So when I come in, I've got my monthly update for the schedule I want to load. You can see my upload windows are all open in this particular case. If I want to load in one for this bear project here, for example, that one's going to be an XCR file because that one's the P6 template. I can come in and load my P6 schedule. And once I do that, I'm going to get an email here any second that gives me instant feedback on that. So without the person receiving the schedule, having to load it in Acumen, run reports, I'm going to get an email back that's going to tell me exactly how it scored. Might take a minute to run through my VPN. You already got it? Oh, I can get it. You want to forward it to me?
You know, it might be.
Oh, it's because I'm logged in as you. I'm not going to get it. That's right. I logged in as Denise, so she got the email. But if you can forward it to me, I'll pull it up. Thank you. You got there? All right. So it helps if you're logged in as yourself with your own email address to get those back. But I should have it any second now from Denise. Here it is. So this is what she received back as soon as I hit that submit. It's going to give me the report. Let me just take out the part where it was that was her forwarding it. Nope, I don't know what just happened. That back up. So you can see it'll give you, in this case, it gave me a warning that my time now date wasn't current. Shows my score. So I scored a 32, which was received, rejected. If it had been over 75, it would have said accepted, rejected, or sorry, accepted, received, accepted. So you can adjust the terminology that comes out on that. In this particular case, it wasn't even close. So it scored a pretty low score. As the person sending this, I can then open this report and I can see exactly why it scored so low. So it'll highlight the issues that this particular file that I loaded had. In this case, we had a lot of missing logic. We had a really high usage of lags. There's my critical activities, my hard constraints. But probably what's driving a lot of that score down is the percentage of missing logic, as well as the high number of lags that we've got in this particular grouping. A lot of high float items as well. So once I send that in, I can then go work on these issues, tweak the schedule, and then go back and resubmit it without the person having to go in and manually tell me why the schedule was not up to up to standards that it needed to be. So the same basic process flows for each of these. I'm going to go ahead and upload them to each so that Denise can show you what it looks like to retrieve them here in a moment. I believe this one is the BK3. I'm going to override the whatever was in there, so it'll use my new acceptance criteria. And we'll go ahead and upload one for the welcome project as well. So now I've gone in and I've uploaded a different file for each of these particular projects that I'm assigned to as a submitter. Those automated responses are going to Denise's email since she's the profile that we use for submitting the schedules, which should be fine because she's actually about to take over the screen here in a moment and walk you through what it looks like to go in and evaluate them, how you can kind of see trends of the submittals that have already been done as the person who controls the program and what information automatically loads into Touchstone through the automated process, but also then downloading those schedules and taking them into Open Plan to piece them together for the larger IMS. So at this time, I was going to pass it over to you to go in and do that, if that works for you. Yeah, sure. Any questions on what we've done here so far? All right. So I'm going to unplug this. I'm going to stop the share so that you can just share from yours.
Just make sure you do the mute and turn on. All right, will you hear me okay? You got it? Oh, they did. Oh, wait a second. Is it because I have my audio off? I think it's because I have my audio off. Is that better? No? Still can't hear me? Is that better? Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me okay? Do I need to yell louder? Okay, so what I've done now is currently I'm logged in as essentially the receiver of the schedule, and just to show you, because it came to me just to let you see what it looks like if it's not rejected. Down here on the bottom, you see where it says received for review. So that's essentially the message they would get if it was not rejected. And as well, they would still get the output report so that, you know, if they are scoring even passing, but maybe want to look at what some of the areas are that they might want to look at, they still have that report as well. But as the receiver, then once I get that, you know, notification where they've submitted something, if it's been rejected, I can just come in here and look at, you know, what was the issue with it. So if I come in here, for example, to the welcome project, and I see that there was a submittal, this one was received, It was greenlit, so it's been accepted for review. Then I can go ahead and come look and see if I want to, what exactly that report said by clicking on this, and it's going to open up the same report that was sent to the submitter. So for example, whether it was received or rejected, I can go in there and kind of see what's going on with it if I want to. This particular screen here, I do have some ability to do a little bit of configuration on this screen. So for example, just, looking at out of the box, the information that we have, the percent complete, the score, the status, the window close date. I might want to add the last updated or last submitted date or something like that. And then I can go ahead and add that over here as a column as well. And then I could have that data here. So I can see that this was when each of those files was actually last updated. I'm going to jump over to one that has a few more submissions real quick. Because one of the other things I can do is sort of track over time and look at sort of where the submittals have fallen. Have we been improving in quality? Have we been declining in quality? Have we been kind of all over the map? I can pull this up and actually look at, the history of the submittals by their score. And you can see for this particular project, we have a lot in here. If they were missing, I would have that. If for some reason, like they missed the window, or something happened, I can go in here and upload basically a replacement snapshot if I want to, because the other purpose of this is I have a running history of everything that's been submitted, the file that was submitted at that time. So I don't have to worry about somebody coming back 6 months later and saying, oh no, when I submitted to you, this was in it. All I have to do is come in here and open that file and say, no, it wasn't. This is what you submitted to me on that date. And so this is what was in the file. And so it really gives you the ability to store that accurate project history. Now, some of this you can kind of see from when Jared had it up here. But, if I'm the submitter, I'm going to probably go into my programs. In this case, I'm still going to be going into that same zoo program. I am seeing sort of the same information as well. But once I come in here, I can actually take these projects then and I can download them. Now, again, even if it's been rejected, I can open it up and see why it's been rejected. I have the ability to download any of these, but what I would just do is come over here and download that schedule. You can see it's downloaded over here. I can open it up if I want to, and interact with it, what have you. But in this case, what we're doing today is, because this is a large program, when we come back over here to the programs menu, and we can see here, this one has essentially 3 projects within the program. Now, the way this is set up right now, it looks like there's essentially one project or one project deliverable that would tie to potentially one project subcontract. If you had, 3 subcontracts that all had to do with, for example, that bear project, what you can do is you can set each of those kind of sub projects up as an individual project so that folks would be able to submit their own schedule for their own sub project. And that's sort of what the IMS that I have created over here in Open Plan looks like. And this little bar is getting in my way here. So what I've done over here is I've duplicated that zoo program. I'm going to go ahead and open it up. Now, what I've done here is, essentially I do have 3 projects. Within those 3 projects, I might have any number of subcontractors, partners, even vendors who are sending me information that I am rolling up into both my project schedule and my program schedule. And then at the top level of my program, I have my own wraparound milestones and even potentially my own scope of work that I need to account for. So for example, for this zoo program, these are my top level milestones. These are the milestones for the entire program. I need to make sure, even if I have to have 4 or 5 subcontractors, that when they're submitting schedule information to me, these are the milestones that I need to hold to. And then if they're going to potentially be impacting those milestones, I need to be able to communicate that information back. For those of you not familiar with Open Plan, this is just a standard Gantt chart view in here. I'm going to open up a different view because it gives us a little bit more information in context to what we're looking at today. Sorry about my voice here. And I'm just going to open a basic progress bar chart. And all it is it just has different columns that we have added, because with Open Plan, pretty much everything you see here is configurable for in terms of the columns you want to have and the information, whether you want a Gantt chart, just plain spreadsheet, what have you. But for this project right here, it is a brand new project. We've just started executing work. So I did, as the owner of my wraparound milestones, I did go in here and take a start on that milestone. Down here, I have my individual projects, and then within there, I have my sub projects. Now, these sub projects are, as you can see when Jared was loading projects, they might be in a variety of different project scheduling tools because of the fact that I don't necessarily have control over what folks are using. So some of these subcontracts might be coming to me in an MPP, an XDR, an Open Plan BK3 file. I have the ability to manage everything all in here and bring in those updates as they come in. And in this case, get accepted for review via Touchstone. Within these projects, I actually have logic linking the sub projects within the projects to each other. And even at the program level, I might have dependencies between the projects within my program. So this particular project, it has interdependencies between the various sub projects here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those files that were loaded, and I'm going to go ahead and bring that information into here, and then we can see what that is going to look like. Now, because of the way I have it set up, I'm going to want to bring that information in at the lowest level. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and start with bringing in my Microsoft project file. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open that. And so this right here is just one subcontractor's Microsoft project file, essentially. Now I have obviously in my Open Plan. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring in that file that we just had brought over. And I'm going to have my configurations in this case are already set up, but it's going to go ahead and it's going to be tied to the project. It's just loading my configurations here. So this was the same project. I just downloaded it earlier. And so once I grab that, I have my options already defined. I'm just bringing over project status. Obviously, if they had communicated to me that they had a baseline change and I needed to actually update my representative baseline within my IMS, then I could do that. But in this case, I'm just going to be bringing over my project status. And now it's going to pull in the data from that Microsoft project file. And if I scroll down to here, actually, let me scroll over here, then I now have status that wasn't there before because this was a fresh project where it could not be started. But now this subcontractor has submitted a Microsoft project file to me and indicated where they have started work. So I'm going to save this one and we're just going to go ahead and we're going to close this one out. And we're going to pull in our other two files. So if I come over here and we have actually, I want that one first. I want that one first. Let's do bear. Hold on. I need to see which bear file this is. Just 1 second. It is the BK3. This one is this one here was an XCR file. So again, I'm just looking at the lowest level sub project. So this is essentially a copy of my subcontractors P6 file. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring over their P6 data. I already have these configurations in here from when I was setting up. And again, I'm going to only bring in the project status. If it's a subcontractor schedule, there's a good chance I don't even have resources. So I'm certainly not going to bring that information in. And because they haven't notified me that there's been any baseline updates, I'm not going to be bringing anything in there. So just limiting myself to the project status. And again, I can see now I have project status from their project that's now been loaded into my file. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close both of those out. And then I'm going to bring in my last file, which was a subcontractor that was also happened to be using Open Plan. And so I'm going to bring in their information. Now that's going to be a little bit different because it is an Open Plan file. But I'm going to go ahead and grab that one. And then once I've done that, then I can go ahead and open back up my integrated master schedule. And I'm going to open everything up and I'm going to go ahead and go back to that progress spreadsheet that I had been looking at before. And I'm going to see where I now have status in my file that had not been there before. So I've got some status starting to come in. And so at that point now, if I have any work that is mine, I might either have that again in a low-level sub-project file. I might have it up here in my wraparound file. But what I can do now is my normal month-end processing or business activities. So obviously, first thing I'm probably going to do is run a time analysis. Then I'm going to start looking at, what are the impacts potentially to my driving paths? What is my critical path looking like? So if I was to go ahead and just, let's take a look at my critical path. This isn't a very large schedule, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it and say I would like to have the first 5 paths to my end of contract milestone. If there aren't 5, it's going to go ahead and it's going to tell me that there's not 5. There actually was in this case. But now I can actually look at that. And because I'm looking at my true integrated master schedule, you can see even on the first path, I'm going through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sub projects. So my sub projects, if they are impacting each other, I know about it immediately. If any of them or a combination of them is impacting my programmatic milestones, I'm going to be able to see that immediately. The nice thing is now that I've run this updated critical path, I can actually save this and then export them back a copy of this is what it looks like now that we've incorporated everybody. So I can go back and open up my little Microsoft project schedule, just that little piece of it, go ahead and export that back out as a Microsoft project schedule and send it back to my subcontractor and say, hey, once we put everybody's stuff in here, it looks like you have an impact. So we obviously need to get together and have a conversation to see if there's something we can do to mitigate the impact, both on the other subcontractor as well as the programmatic milestones. And then obviously, again, it's being an open plan, and we know we're going to have an open plan session later if you want to come by for that this afternoon. But things that I'm probably going to want to do is, maybe look at the logic. I can look at the logics, just for this particular programmatic milestones. I can come in here and say, okay, let's take a look and see what my PERT chart looks like now that I have everything in here, and come through here and look at things. If I'm trying to communicate information to folks, being able to see, hey, this is your sub project here, and you're interconnected now to this sub project, and you're impacting them potentially. Being able to understand for the subcontractor side when they have handoffs with each other, or they have handoffs to me that might be, driving some sort of impact to them, it really makes a difference in terms of the quality of your schedule. They're not necessarily talking to you, and they're kind of depending on you to be that intermediary to point out the fact that, you guys essentially have a relationship, even if you don't know it, because you're both working towards the same goal. I mean, again, the P6 customer or P6 subcontractor, I can export their data back as a P6, an XCR file, and send that back to them. So I have a lot of ways to be able to communicate information back to them. And then plus, for my own benefit, being, the owner of the IMS overall, I'm responsible for this program. I'm always going to be aware of, who's impacting who, if the critical path or even the driving path to one of my interim milestones or handoffs, or gates that I might have, I'm going to be able to see that because I'm pulling in all of my sub-project schedules all into one singular location and making sure that it accurately reflects the work that's going on in my program. Now, I think we've kind of got ahead of time here a little bit, didn't we? Yeah, what, are we running to 11? Let me see if anybody's got any questions so I can drag this out a little bit. Go ahead. Oh, lots of questions. So time analysis. So that is doing your forward pass, backward pass. That's just kind of doing all of that all at once. Every tool kind of calls it something different. In Open Plan's case, we call it time analysis. And you do have options in here. I just kind of skipped it for the benefit of this particular. I got to give you guys some reason to come back for my afternoon session. But we do have various options. What somebody decides to choose. Some of this is going to be industry specific. Just depends. Was that your only question? You go.
So if you have your integrated master, are you able to combine those and export them to XML across the grid?
Yeah, so I can either export down at that lower level, or I can take this and essentially flatten it out and export it. And it's the same for Microsoft Project. For P6, can you do it as a combined XML?
You can do it as a combined export. You can read it.
So it would export as a multi-project essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You could also pull it back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and so that's let me see. Do I have? I don't know if I have it set up over here. So so I will say it doesn't have, so the Open Plan is not going to block you from bringing in something with a bad data date. That's one of the ways that Touchstone can come in, because one of the settings, and this is honestly, I turned this off because I knew that I was going to be violating this. But when we're talking about the acceptance criteria, and it booted me out, that is one of the things that you can make an automatic rejection when we're coming into the individual projects and looking at the configuration right down here on the bottom. So I can automatically reject it if they do not have a current status date. Now, probably more likely to use that on my project users than my P6 or Open Plan users. But I do have that option to do that. And that's another thing when I'm over here looking at these snapshots. I thought there was is the time now going to count status date for everybody or just Open Plan? Does the time now field, does that count just Open Plan or everybody?
Everybody.
Okay. So we call it time now in Open Plan, but obviously, for you, it'd be status date. So right here, if I added that column, then I'm going to see what's the status date in that file when it's submitted.
We have a plan.
I can't really hear great. For the time now date, I thought, isn't that
Yeah, when you set it up automatically, project, you say it should be.
That's the time now window, right? So right here, the bottom one, the time now window, I've got it basically maxed out for the whole month, but I could come in here and like you said, yeah, if your time now is within 2 weeks, I'm gonna go ahead and pull it in. You would just come in here and click that pencil and change this. So now, as long as they're within 12 calendar days. I'm trying to think if there's any, and so like I said, I can, if I need to, I can add missing snapshots in there. If for some reason somebody was having a problem, but you know, when it comes to, you know, if you have a super complex integrated master schedule like that, and honestly, it doesn't even have to be that complex. But when I was a schedule lead and we'd be getting, you know, 5 subcontractor schedules every month, even having Acumen, which love Acumen, but still I would have to wait for them to get it to me, which might be 6 o'clock on a Friday night. Then I'm going to load it into Acumen. I'm going to see it's complete trash. And I then can't get a hold of anybody until Monday, and they don't know it's trash until Monday. And I'm now cutting days out of my turnaround time. Whereas with Touchstone, if he submits it at 6 o'clock on a Friday night and it's trash, he knows it's trash immediately. I'm already out at dinner. I'm not even worried about it.
You get another one as well.
Yeah, you can set it up to do the notification.
Whether even if, you'll get.
Yeah.
Email, it's submitted, but here's how.
Yeah, so they can spend their whole weekend sending me 20 different updates until they get accepted, and I haven't had to do a single ounce of work. So I know when I come in Monday, if it got accepted, I know it's at least a minimum quality that I might feel comfortable loading into my integrated master schedule, because I don't want to load something that's going to blow up my file, because then I have to sit there and hunt down everything that, you know, went wrong. So if I can just completely remove myself from that initial process and make sure that I have some minimal level of quality, then, you know, that's more time back for me to do schedule analysis, than just sitting here basically babysitting a subcontractor submittal.
So eventually then learn to do the uphill check for agent.
You'd hope. Well, so you know, that's one of the things I'm going to cover later in Open Plan. There's user validation. So if they do something they didn't, they're going to get a big pop-up that says, and you hope that the 50th time they get that button saying, that there'll be some level of learning going on there.
And at the very least, with the reporting, they get the outline of what was wrong and what we're defining as what was wrong. So at least both parties have access to the criteria.
Mm-hmm.
Both parties.
Everyone's looking at the same thing. Yep. So Touchstone doesn't address cost and resource, at least, I mean, roadmap maybe, but.
It's the same deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
So those same sort of efforts you can't put down and get time phase. The other thing I don't know if I'm sure that remember all that.
He makes all this stuff, so.
You can, we have a agency who use these within your contract, so if you don't have a file for content, you're automatically rejected.
Mhm.
There's an option to switch,
Yep.
say on any individual network, if you don't have network, we added that in with their contract.
Yeah, that was where, when I came over here, when I was saying, you know, like this similar with the status date, I can come in here, and this one I had set up that way. So to automatically reject if they fail the critical path test, or, you know, if you're obviously not necessarily within the industry most of y'all are in, but if you're, you know, Department of Defense contract, if you've got a lead in there, that's literally an automatic rejection. So if somebody was sending me something with a lead in it, I don't even want to look at it, because that means they're just not even paying attention. Or if you know, have the on the invalid actual dates, that should be that's bare minimum level of effort, guys, you know. So if you send me something and you've got, you know, either early dates in the past because you've got project or you've got, you know, putting in actuals 2 months from now and nobody's bothering to check your schedule, I can make those auto reject. And similarly, just because I'm on this screen, the scoring method, if you're familiar with the scoring method in Fuse, it is the same way where you can either have the score being based upon an average of the metrics, or if they fail within one. So for example, if you didn't have leads, be an automatic rejection, but if they had one, then that would be a fail, and so then they don't get credit for that. So you can decide which one of those scoring methods that you're using.
So that's like sliding scale with.
Yeah, essentially what the record.
Yeah.
One metric's gonna do is give you the percentage of activities that's in the flag for Indian. That didn't have any issues. So if you have, you know, these are all negative in this case, so these are the ones on that screen. Obviously, the one that's like resources is a neutral one, but anything that's negative connotation.
Yeah.
If the activity fails for it, whether it fails on one or it fails on 10 of them, that one's gonna be.
Yeah.
Taken out of the.
Yeah,
percentage.
yeah, you just got a 0 on that one, yeah. So like you could get, you know, for example, for logic, if you pass, then you get credit for that. For resources, if you were in the red, you're not gonna get credit for that one in your score.
Sometimes can be helpful is if you have like a lot of checks, like for example, you may have an activity that passes on logic, next activity is critical path test, and it goes all the way down and it fails one metric. It doesn't change your score if it fails on 1 or it fails on 10. If you want it to be more of a skew towards, okay, it still passed on 9 out of the 10 things, let's not knock it all the way that for you.
And just from, you know, from using it in Fuse, if you're using average and metrics, they're generally going to have higher scores than you're going to see if you have the record one fail. So if you're thinking, what should I set my threshold to? If you know you're using average, chances are you might want to set your threshold a little bit higher because you know it's taking a true average into account, versus if you're using the record fails, if one metric fails, you know, if they get hit, they're going to get hit. So you might want to have a 65 acceptance instead of a 75, because that's all configurable.
About ready to wrap up in an hour. I know we have the room full up.
You guys can hide out in here.
I'll be doing another presentation here in about 30 minutes on risk adjusted schedule for risk in Acumen, and that's.
And then I'll be doing a pretty deep dive open plan demonstration later this afternoon, if you want to come by for that. And then we also have just an overview of everything in this suite, because sometimes people are like, oh, we didn't know you had this. So it'll be an overview of everything that's in Deltek's PPM toolkit.
This was kind of our touchstone. Mine, I'm doing that to be more acting based.
And then obviously, if you have any other direct questions, we'll be at the booth all week. The end.